movies for black girl nerds.
Andrew.
Hi there, Kelsey and Julia. Thank you so much for your time. I enjoyed this film because the healthcare industry is so complicated, from doctors who are just beginning to the administrative position. Kelsey, beginning with you, as as people become great as in their chosen profession, it's almost like they have to detach themselves in order to further achieve that greatness. Is that the progression of what Dr. Boxer has experienced through his own journey of becoming an innovator, an administrator, that separating himself from people in order to achieve that greatness?
Right. Good question. I think his separation from people started when he was a boy, actually, so that maybe he was being primed for this role he ends up playing in his life. Because he's actually been willing to step away from so many things that others would want in their life, quality of life issues. He's been given a bit of a tough hand to play, but he has made a choice to focus on what he thinks his life can be the greatest value by having lived, and his mortality rings in his ears every day, and it was a fascinating character to play. And so the idea of someone else's mortality it's not a particular personal decision for him, because his own is not even personal. He doesn't even look at his own life as being of value in and of itself. It just is, he has a job to do. And it's a remarkable character. And I found it very sad and it's still hard for me to watch it sometimes, because I feel so sorry for him on some level.
It is very sad and layered because doctors are looked to for solutions, for answers, yet they're highly critiqued, highly challenged. Jordan, Julia, your character, Dr. Jordan, is no exception, except she hasn't gone down that road long enough because of her age. So she still has some of that bedside manner attached to her that comes from, first going into medical school and choosing that profession. Do you think that is also a challenge as you ascend greatness in your profession, that you have to separate yourself from people, since Jordan hasn't done that yet when we meet her in the film?
Yeah, I think that we see in the beginning when it's her first day on the committee, and she's, even when she's pitching herself, she is very idealistic, and she's kind of made fun of for that. That she sees the patient, she really cares and is emotionally invested in her patient. And then we see her years later when she's the head of the committee, and she's like spaced out and very disillusioned, and has been kind of beaten down. And probably has, through years and years of doing this, has had to learn to distance herself more, despite her original intentions in becoming a doctor.
Kelsey, as you mentioned, it is very sad to, even as not only Dr. Boxer's own journey, but what he's tasked to do, and kind of weighing the merits of who doesn't deserve, your own personal biases of what you think are good and bad in making these decisions for other people. How did you unwind yourself? Because that's a lot of heavy emotional content to carry around with you when you're filming something like this.
It's interesting. That's a muscle I think you develop as an actor anyway. You play some pretty wild stuff if you have some luck at this game, and unwinding yourself is a necessary sort of muscle, I think. So it was fine for me. I dropped him as soon as I got home and kissed my 3 kids, and and then my wife, and life was good. It's just it's hard for me to watch it sometimes, because I re-entered who that character was, and he was a more challenging character to play for me. I'm reminded of something of my own. I had a heart attack 14 years ago, and it was interesting. One of the doctors I spoke to, he said, we look at patients sometimes and we just know they're not going to make it. It's just that's how it is. And it was interesting. He was sharing that information with me, and of course I said, well, so which am I? He said, well, I wouldn't have shared that with you, but I thought you were one of the ones that was going to go. So it was helpful on some level, but that's an everyday thing they deal with. And God bless them. I mean, I hope they find a way to unwind from it, honestly.
Mhm. Julia, the heart is attached to so much sentiment in humanity, love, but in essence, there's a line in the movie that says, you don't know the heart is just a muscle. How has your own depth of knowledge of the heart and its functions on the other side have increased just by stepping into a role like this?
I love that line. I told Kelsey yesterday that's one of the best lines in the movie. The heart, you don't understand that the heart is only a muscle. I am a romantic at heart, so I still like to infuse it with a lot of poetry and think of the heart as a bigger thing.
Me too.
Because we are, human beings are, this is not what a doctor's perspective would be, but human beings are not, they're the sum of all their parts. You can't just exist with one organ. I mean, I know even my character says, at one point, heart is first, then the other organs. Obviously, the brain is really important, but I still like to believe that we're the sum of all our parts. We're the whole. You can't break us apart into each individual organ. But that's why I'm not a doctor. That's why I'm an actress.
I couldn't do that. It's too heavy for me. It's too sad. Thank you so much, Kelsey. Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Kelsey. Girlfriends. Are we going to get a girlfriends reunion?
Well, you know what? In the back of my mind, I think it's time to have another glimpse of our girlfriends. But we're bringing back the game. That's in process now, which has made me very happy. But I would love to see the girls again. So we'll see. It's. I hope it's not an empty gesture that I say this. I would like to see them again.
I appreciate you, and I appreciate that series and both of you for your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. This is a wonderfully emotional, layered film that I was really, really into and leaned in just from the beginning. Colman, beginning with you, your character, Father Dunbar, we see this kind of relationship between church and science. And although it's a later chosen profession, and there's often a separation of those two, but they always manage to come together in hospitals with last rites and all of those types of things. Can a lay person, a religious person, work within an institution like that and still maintain that connection to spirituality that's often absent from medical professionals since they think specifically of science?
Right. You know what I think is phenomenal? I think it goes to his skill set. He was a disbarred attorney. So I think that he's using his skill set for good, his analytical skills, his pragmatism to be able to be in service and really just sort of be the outsider, be the audience's eye. He's not coming in to say, this is what you should do. He's just saying you should examine everything, unpack it all, and really look at your own, the things that you bring with it that you may be prejudiced about in some way, whether you know it or not, or biased, and just unpack that stuff. Because he's just saying it's a life or death decision. So really just try to get to the essence and the core of why, and let it be true to what you really think. What do you really think should happen? And not weigh it with money or politics or anything else like that. So I think that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to actually just say, unpack everything. And I think that's, and I think he's coming from a spiritual place. I don't think necessarily he's coming from, he's collared and all, but he seems pretty more non-denominational to me. I don't know why, but he does,
Yeah, I think so, especially since he had an ex-wife and all that. But he's
got a full life. He's got a full life, and he's made this decision later in life. So that's what I love. He's still just an ordinary man, and I think that's just something to unpack. Period. That like even your man of the cloth is still just a man,
right? Absolutely. That's a word. Austin, when I really leaned into what the characters were doing, weighing the options, who gets treatment, who gets it, who doesn't, what do you value, your own, like Colman mentioned, your own personal biases. As you began to craft the story and do your own research, these are two specific moments in time for these people, but how deep into your research did you go to fully inform yourself about the process? This is the process we have, for better or for worse.
I worked very hard at that. I mean, I did have the film is inspired by a play by Mark St. Germain of the same name. And so I did, which I used a lot of the ethical the ethical arguments that he's bringing up and the way he explores that. And I brought that over to the script, although the film ended up being quite different than the play. But I worked with, in updating it and adapting it, I worked with medical consultants during the script phase, because I wanted this to feel like the most authentic medical film that people have ever seen. And so that was very, very important to me. And we had medical consultants, doctors on set every day, working with the actors whenever there was a surgery scene or anything related to medicine, because I wanted to get that right. Because bottom line is, this film needed to feel as authentic as humanly possible.
The tone and tension of this film is very intense. There's no levity, there's no comedy in situations like this when you have people's lives in your hands. Colman, did you find yourself kind of thinking about your own values, biases? If you're presented, say, with these people, this person may have weight issues, this person may have children waiting to go to college and a family. Did you weigh your own kind of biases when you thought about this?
Absolutely. I think that's the intention of it too. I think that's the intention for us all as audience members to unpack this stuff, unpack what we're thinking about. Because they're like, I know that I'm judging when I watch the film. I'm like, well, yeah, maybe it should be this person. But then I'm putting that on. Like, who am I to say that this person is not better after they've received treatment in some way for a mental illness? And you know what I mean? Well, who am I to say this? But it helps you unpack your own stuff, which I think is like a great intention of any film. Because it really puts you in the decision-making seat. Because I'm sure everyone will say, why we give it to this person? Why? What's in your background? What's in your history? What judgment are you making? Instead of actually just looking at the facts, man, just looking at the facts.
And lastly, Austin, even your own personal decision making. Are you a black and white person? Do you play in the gray? How do you go about it?
I like to write characters that live in the gray, and I'm sure you saw it in this film. I don't like to write characters that are all good or all bad, because I don't believe that reflects real life. I think that we're all flawed in some ways, and so the most extreme example in this film is Granger, who's played by Dan Hedaya. He would be considered the villain bribing the committee, but the guy just loves his son, and his attempts at bribing the committee are misguided, but they're coming from a place of love, and so I think that it really rolls over to all of the characters that there are. We're playing in the gray.
Well, I must say, gentlemen, I had to shed a couple tears and think about my own decision-making process with this, and it affected me greatly.
Thank you.
Uh-oh.
Thank you so much.
So I appreciate you. I froze up a little bit. So
just for a second, but we got you. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. This is a beautiful film. It was very, very moving, and things we don't consider from the outside looking in. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Yeah.
Better shake your booties for black girl nerves. Better shake your booties for black girl nerves.